Good day and welcome to your news at noon on Kaieteur Radio. I'm Kevin Smith. With Trinidad and Tobago's collection of world-class oil and gas infrastructure, there is no need for nations like Guyana to reinvent the wheel by pumping millions of tax dollars into new facilities to refine their oil and gas resources. They can cut significant costs on infrastructure by utilizing what is already in place in their neighbor's backyard. This was the crux of the message delivered by Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, at yesterday's opening of the Energy Conference and Expo Guyana 2023. Rowley, in his presentation, was keen to note that his homeland has the relevant infrastructure to help Guyana and other nations effectively monetize their oil and gas resources, noting that the infrastructure is readily available. The Trinidadian leader said his country has 10 ammonia plants, 7 methanol plants, 4 liquefied natural gas plants, and an iron and steel complex, and an oil refinery that recently produced up to 140,000 barrels of oil per day. During his keynote address at the opening ceremony of the second Guyana International Energy Conference and Expo 2023, President Irfaan Ali vowed to release all contracts signed by the People's Progressive Party government for the multi-billion US dollar Wales Gas to Energy project, but, and I quote, at the appropriate time. President Ali's commitment follows the February 6th motion submitted to the National Assembly by opposition Member of Parliament Ganesh Mahipal, calling for the release of all documents for the Wales Gas to Energy project. The government has touted the ambitious project as one that will fix Guyana's electricity woes. The $2 billion US dollar and counting project is being undertaken with American oil giant ExxonMobil's subsidiary, Esso. We had reported that since the inception of the project, the entire agreement has been shrouded in secrecy. When the heads of agreement was signed, the press was invited but was not allowed to ask questions. Importantly, there has been no press conference on the mega project too, even though there is no updated feasibility study proving the viability of the project. And the government is pursuing the construction of a natural gas-fired electricity generation plant capable of producing some 300 megawatts of electricity to be supplied to the national grid. Touted as a means to transition away from traditional fossil fuels, such as heavy fuel oil, to a renewable energy mix, the natural gas-fired plant is among the flagship projects earmarked for West Demerara. According to the most recent project summary for the gas-to-power project, submitted by GPL, the intention is to install generating capacity of 300 megawatts of combined cycle gas turbine, or CCGT, and that CCGTs will be capable of combusting rich and lean natural gas as their primary fuel. It should be noted that GPL is not the developer of the project, which was recently highlighted by international attorney-at-law Melinda Janke. As both local and international delegates on Tuesday made their way into the Marriott Hotel for the 2023 International Energy Conference and Expo, they were greeted by protesters who stood in front of the Humaniana with placards insisting that oil companies cannot make profits while Guyana loses. Some held placards demanding full liability coverage on any spills from parent companies, while others called for full compliance with Guyana's law when it comes to environmental permits. One of the protesters, Dunita Radzik, an environmentalist, said that oil companies operating here in Guyana have not been adhering to the country's laws, especially the Environmental Protection Act. One example, according to the environmentalist, is that companies are handling radioactive and hazardous waste for the oil and gas sector are being allowed to operate in residential communities without environmental permits. You're listening to Kaieteur Radio, 99.1 and 99.5 FM. This is your news at noon. We'll return shortly after the break.
This is GHK Lal inviting you to join me weekdays from Monday to Friday on the National Outlook for commentary on a range of issues. Immediately after the 12 noon and 7 p.m. newscasts on Kaieteur Radio at 99.1 FM and 99.5 FM. Looking forward to you sharing in the conversation.
You don't have to be a fountain of knowledge to help children with their schoolwork while they're at home. But you do have to be caring, understanding, loving, and patient. It's an unsettling time for everyone, but children still need a safe and secure environment. So don't overwhelm them with endless news items or problems. Keep them gainfully occupied and amused, exercised and rested. Protect our children. A message from the Child Care and Protection Agency, Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, and UNICEF.
Welcome back. With 14 of Guyana's oil blocks presently up for auction, the government will be awarding special spots to countries with particular interest. Vice President Bara Jagdeo announced on Tuesday that there are areas the government hopes to work through a bilateral arrangement with the governments of Brazil, Qatar, India, and those others who have expressed interest. Last month, it was reported that Vice President Bara Jagdeo is soon expected to leave Guyana to tie up agreements with the government of India for cooperation in the blossoming local oil and gas industry. President Ali, along with a high-level team, were in India for a 7-day trip and entered into several new agreements with the Indian state for collaboration in other sectors, inclusive of manufacturing and power generation, among others. Meanwhile, the Amerindian People's Association, or APA, on Tuesday took umbrage at statements made by Minister of Local Government and Regional Development Nigel Dharamlal on his Facebook page. The minister, in addition to accusing the association of being politically aligned with and receives financial support from the PNC, stated that the APA is trying to block indigenous communities from receiving billions of dollars in development funds from the carbon credit facility. The association said the APA wishes to take this opportunity to remind the Honorable Minister of the dangers of making unsubstantiated claims, as well as the ethical guidelines and code of conduct his position demands. Further, the organization sought to remind the minister that the Constitution of Guyana affords every citizen the right to participate in the political process. In other news, a 28-year-old Bent Street, Wortmanville, Georgetown man drowned during an outing at a Soosdyke-Linden Highway Creek on Sunday last. Dead is Kester Gulliams. According to reports, Gulliams and his friends were at a creek where they consumed alcohol. At about 15:30, Gulliams reportedly left to swim in the water, and shortly thereafter, an alarm was raised that someone was encountering difficulties in the water and disappeared. Public-spirited persons formed a search party, and Gulliams' motionless body was later found in the creek. And now let's tell you, while currently meeting around 50% of the nation's electricity needs with its hydropower plant, the Surinamese government stands firm on its commitment to reducing emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases as part of its global fight against climate change. This is according to Suriname's President Chandrika Prasad Santokhi, who was at the time addressing the opening of the 4-day International Energy Conference and Expo. Santokhi, who attended virtually, said that the need for energy continues to increase and the world has to develop a long-term solution to meet the energy needs of a growing world population. This, he said, means adopting solar, wind, and hydropower energy. With the push towards transitioning to renewable energy, the president said solar energy is the key to the development of Suriname's interior, since it is a clean and endless source of energy. And to wrap things up, a 51-year-old man from Demerara, Mahaica died on Monday from COVID-19, the health ministry reported. It is unclear whether the man was vaccinated. His death takes the total number of deaths from the pandemic to 1,298. You're listening to Kaieteur Radio, and we're about to wrap up our news at noon, but at this time we turn the pages of today's Kaieteur News to page 7, dedicated to being blunt. Exxon wants more. More oil blocks are what Exxon wants. No worries, it will happen, which is guaranteed by the PPP government. Given time, Exxon may not stop at oil blocks. Guyana could end up a subsidiary of the American company. Many Guyanese believe that this is already so. The call is for the PPP government to make it official. And that brings us to the end of today's News at Noon. I'm Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening.
Want value for your advertising dollar? Then place your ads on